I have no clue why I feel the need to have such an output, but I guess the output is a direct byproduct of input. The output that we see typically from those who put things out are only a direct reflection of what we feel inwards. And therefore, seasons change, moments change, and it's very hard to capture certain things. And very few times do our filters actually allow us to capture what we want to. And beyond just the filter capturing it, it's about a way of conveying our perspective in a way that allows it to somewhat be fitting to what we thought of. Because oftentimes, when you think of an idea, it can be very hard to materialize. And I use that word a lot because there's kind of a esoteric or magical element to a spark or a seed, and it's almost so it's a very very interesting feeling. Like many times I find myself recognizing certain notations but not knowing how to replicate them, but wanting to. But once again, I was asked the question, or at least try to, and the answer that somebody came up with shocked me. It was somebody asking for a defining moment in their lives, and they said, and it wasn't an attempt to discredit their question in any way, shape, or form. It was merely them really suspending belief and opening and broadening a perspective. They said, "There is no one defining aspect of life. The beauty of enriching our own lives and finding vitality in each moment of our life is being able to redefine ourselves every day. Some have base foundations, some have base definitions, and some have ways that they define themselves. But the aspect of life that they found the most beautiful was the fact that they could keep on redefining themselves, keep on finding that new vitality for life, instead of relegating themselves to a defining moment that then defined them for the remainder of their lives. Despite the fact that mortality is mortal and very short, 70 years is quite substantial. If you really ponder it, life expectancy now is has drastically increased if you're blessed enough to even see past the age of birth. Many aren't even born. So I guess it's nice to know that defining ourselves, it's like releasing a project and getting scared because you're so scared that what you release will inevitably define you, and then getting so scared and sidetracked that you just end up dismissing it altogether. And it's dangerous because oftentimes what we think, what we release, what we do are a byproduct of who we are and what we are internally during those times. And when we tarry and delay, we then leave way for doubt. We then leave way for other seasons to change us, therefore changing our lens of what was once a pure seed. We taint the seed, we tarnish it, we corrupt it, and sometimes it doesn't even grow. And that's okay, because sometimes we can revisit it in later parts of our life and rekindle it with water that allows it to grow. Not defining a seed initially can be the beauty of it growing into all that it can be. And this is oftentimes an example I see used for art, but very little times do I see it used towards humanity. We give up on people a lot, and I mean a lot. Now, I know the term get knocked down 6 times, get up 7. However, we're a lot less forgiving towards our own humanity. We expect a lot of people. Now, I may play into this cliche, but it's not my intention to do so. We oftentimes expect of others what we don't expect of ourselves, because if we were judged as critically, then, but I guess it's a protective mechanism, and it's done realistically. There, we see people. If we were to allow the seeds to be people, and understand that not all seeds cultivate and are ripe during certain seasons, or maybe I'm just furthering the point that some people aren't meant to be in other people's lives, because you can't fertilize seeds in certain lands. There are certain soils, there are certain places that just aren't fertile for seeds to grow. And sometimes what we may it's I use the example again. The significant other that is doing so much better with another person, and it relegates you to questioning why, how, and then questioning your own esteem, when oftentimes we're questioning the wrong thing. Now, by no means am I saying that your soil was improper, although sometimes there are some soils that have no business fertilizing anything. But all seeds fertilize in the right soil. And sometimes the right seed just doesn't find the right soil. And this can be applicable for a lot of things. This is transient. Well, not fully transient. This just transcends the narrow lens that I was framing it in, which was artistically and defining oneself. But here I am 5 minutes into this, not knowing what direction to take this, not knowing how to go about this, just knowing that I want to be still. And that's another thing. It's kind of beautiful to see your lens and your work and perspective shift day by day alongside your perspective. I already used that word, perception, perspective. Either which way, it's nice because we're so dynamic as people. We change so much day to day. And it's so beautiful to see what we can create. And like I use the word input and output a lot because output is oftentimes what we put out, but it's very hard to put anything out if you're not ingesting anything. I guess it's the same concept of when you ingest the wrong food, you can't expect a lot out of your body. Tolerance and demand. I used to play sports very competitively, and I'm very injury prone. No, I wouldn't define myself as injury prone. Let's just say that I'm prone to having moments of me needing to heal often, emotionally and physically, which with my body, it was a direct byproduct of me not having the tolerance to meet my demand. I wasn't able to tolerate what I demanded of my body. I demanded a lot of my body, a lot of shock absorb. I can jump, but I can't land. And I demanded a lot of myself. I put a lot of stress upon my body. And it never really backfired on me to the point where anything was life-defining or critical. I had like 2 broken feet. I think they were both hairline fractures, one more severe than the other. One an external force caused it, but there were other things that surrounded that could have probably stopped it. I had this really weird knee injury, and then I think at the height of one of my best seasons in basketball playing for East York, I also got injured mid-season. I played 4 years there. 2 of those 4 years were spent injured. I've given my body a lot of time to heal. I've given my body a lot of time to redefine itself because a lot of my identity was basketball. And to this day, I still resonate with it a lot as per the last podcast where I mentioned basketball. So I wonder what would have happened if I had allowed my mind to define me as a basketball player. What would have happened? If I would have then been able to step outside of that lens and been able to step outside of that perception. And I sometimes realize that I'm the byproduct of my own undoing. I am the master of my own veil falling. I am the arsonist and the firefighter. I would be so scared of sharing let's just say my innate desire to protect myself overruled my desire to be known. And in being known was self-expression. And I didn't know self to express. And I didn't want self to be expressed. So I just took the easy way out. Identifying myself as a basketball player, although I really love it. But it's not fully who we are as a human. Other than our identity in Christ and who we are in Him, that's a pretty fundamental basis. Like I can't really go left or right on that. It's a pretty simple foundation. But as a human, the amount of labels that are given to us and the amount of labels that we're cursed with. I've always been curious about the term signature or positions or job. It's very intriguing because a lot of people will proudly attribute a label onto themselves and forcibly box themselves. And that's okay to those who have found fulfillment in their positions and understand that there's a wide variety and a wide range of what we know within that word. But it's interesting for me who looks at artists, who looks at entrepreneurs, who looks at authors, and sees the fact that it still defines itself to this day. We may have a base definition. We know an artist is somebody who creates, but the act of creation, the art of creation, the aspect of creation itself, the state of creativity is yet to be known. It's ever defining itself. Nature is constantly defining itself. And yet we as humans find the need to define ourselves so early. We have to find identity. And that's great. Like I'm all for two things can be true at once. I'm all for one finding themselves, and I'm all for people finding who they are. But it kind of seems a little imperfect, not imperfect, because nothing is perfect, but it kind of seems, I'm not going to use futile, because I'm trying to find words that aren't as striking or judgmental, because that's not right. I can't say futile, because futility denotes a sense of wrong. It's not wrong. And there I am defining a word that maybe could be used loosely, but still, I think I'm going to ignore the point and say a lot of my life was spent trying to find that one term, that one thing that would bring everything together. And then I realized that was another aspect of me taking a shortcut, finding a road in a road instead of just understanding that point A, the start of life, may not have a point B. The marathon never ends. I guess when they say it's a marathon, not a race, it's true. Because they say you're oftentimes racing yourself, but you're not really racing yourself to an end goal. There is no end. There really isn't an end. And even in death, people still redefine themselves. I can't tell you how much about people I've learned through their death, burial. It's like, okay, this is sacrilegious. I'm not going to say they've resurrected, because I know that can be misconstrued. But through their death and burial, they have brought more life to their own life when they were alive than they were when they were actually living. It's like their death was their life. I don't know. I think I'm juxtaposing some contrasts, and I'm also trying to tread a line where I'm not doing a disservice to the one who did die on a cross and was resurrected, because I don't want to do that. So I sit here and talk about the fact that I don't know if identity itself can really be defined by one moment, one instance, it's so constant. We evolve so much. We expect people to evolve. We look to people to evolve. We look towards people changing. But then we don't give ourselves that same, I think I just adhere to the logic I said I wouldn't at the beginning. But then we adhere to a stagnant state of one being. That's quite dismissive. And I also found myself doing that as an athlete. Athlete, that term is so beautiful. We all understand and see what athletes can do, what athletes are. I think I also gave this example as an artist. But athletes define themselves from generations to generations. Like, we have the Victor Wembanyama's of the world, who are 7'4" and have the agility and quickness swiftness of a ballerina, who can peruse around the court and tread so softly despite being 7'5" at his frame, and control it so eloquently. It's almost beautiful. Try telling Bob Cousy in the 60s that a guy named Victor Wembanyama at 7'5" would come and be able to play the game of basketball. And the concept of rules in basketball, like the concept of generations and comparing, it's so redundant, because as we all know, rules vary, social norms vary. And I'm not like, there are a lot of justifications for that, such as the concept of just because it's legal, it's right. Well, legality doesn't equal right. We were once able to own people, so I can't necessarily tread that line or logic, but that's for another day, and that's not for me to discuss. The point is, imagine telling a person like Tchaikovsky, a composer of beautiful music, that we'd have a Playboy Cardi. Try describing Playboy Cardi to Tchaikovsky, or try describing Playboy Cardi to a Frank Sinatra, or I can't imagine. There are two artists to me, and this isn't a disservice to other ones, and that really tapped into that creative energy and understood the flow of it, how dynamic it was, and somehow seemed to align themselves with that energy, so that they weren't directly affected by it, but moved with it, whether it was with or without them. They understood that and used it perfectly. Prince and Michael Jackson themselves. I guess they've kind of gone hand in hand throughout their careers, but I'll leave that thought there. I'd say Kanye West, but his career is very much still prevailing, which, 20 years later, through the wire, yeah. I can't even begin to define that. We are ever defining beings who define ourselves through different lenses every day, through our lens, through other people's lenses. We sometimes fear our own lens so much, we go seek out other lenses. Sometimes it's nice to reflect within quietude and silence the outside and allow the inside to speak. There are certain revelations and reflections that you just know that cannot be taught. And I say this referring to something beyond physical, beyond conscious, maybe subconscious, maybe beyond the subconscious, that are just known. Some wisdom, the gut feeling that we get that we can't really explain. That's transient. It transcends all forms of mortality that we know. It goes into a realm that we ourselves aren't really able to capture fully. But we know it, we feel it. And sometimes, like the best way for myself to understand that I am an ever-defining being was to find my identity in Jesus himself. Faith is a huge aspect, to me, a huge part of my life. And when you bring up faith, a lot of people use it as they relegate me to this person who is a faithful mongerer or an extremist, or because we all know the term Bible thumping and all those and whatnot, and we tend to let's just say that we tend to box people that are deemed religious or faithful or even spiritual. We see them as one-track minded. We see them as unable to grasp greater concepts. But to them, I also argue that the beauty of the faith and the beauty of being in a relationship with God is understanding that everything that we see here isn't what is. We are unbound by reason because the realm that we live in is boundless. And to those who may think that religion denotes a lower being or a lower mindset or being unable to wrestle with certain things that are oftentimes harder to wrestle with, the metaphysical is oftentimes a lot harder to wrestle with than the physical. Therefore, why it's called metaphysical. Now, that's a really harsh opinion because that does criticize a whole pool of people. But to those who look at their friends of faith and see them as, well, see it as pointless, understand that faith and love are both, maybe they can be relegated to a definition. Maybe they can be defined by something. But as we both know, there are certain substances that are too beautiful on this earth to define. We have things like oobleck. I think that's what it's called. I'm not sure. The substance that, I'm sure there's a reason why, but when you punch it, it becomes rather hard. Whereas when you just traverse your hand through it, it can easily go through it. There are certain substances that are unknown to man and unknown to any, or will never be known. And it's important to not dismiss those people and to judge them and to define them and to allow them to define themselves and to allow them to have the versatility to evolve. We cannot compartmentalize each other and we cannot allow ourselves to put us in a box. We cannot look down on people who have faith or cannot look down on people who live out their faith, because that's a beautiful thing. I'm not going to say we don't look down on relationships, because I certainly have moments where I look at my page, my For You page, and I'm like, yeah, all right, find the nearest high. Like, you know how it goes. We covet what we don't have as a joke sometimes, but the point is, keep striving to define yourself and don't let a moment define you. Don't allow yourself to be trapped in a box that you haven't even bought. Don't be trapped in a box that you haven't even put yourself in. And even if you have, you can escape that box. And if you don't want to, that's fine. But understand that the beauty of life is sometimes finding zeal within it each and every single day. And looking at it through eyes that have not seen is sometimes understanding that definition isn't structural, isn't even fundamental. It's ever going, it's everlasting. It continues. And that is scary, because oftentimes we fear what we don't understand and we fear change. And those are two things that I'm promoting greatly here. Change, everlasting, flow, being. My favorite statement that Jesus had in the Bible was be still, because that's all we really can be. We don't know today. We don't know tomorrow. We don't know the next second. We don't know anything about the reality that we're living. We take for granted the very steps that we take, not understanding how much core strength it takes. I took food for granted and chewing for granted until I got my wisdom teeth removed. And now I've been now I'm only able to chew with my two front teeth right now until my socket heals. The things that I once took for granted are now blessings. The things that I once took for granted and the things that I once looked at as defining or small are no longer such. They're progressive. They don't allow themselves to be defined, and that's okay, because I'm fine with an ever-changing world and an ever-changing mindset and an ever-changing being. Now, this may be completely contradictory to, there are two concepts that I struggle with, and I'm going to communicate this publicly because I understand that I'll probably get some critique for it. Not even critique. Critique is negative, just discussion. The verse in the Bible that says God is the same today, yesterday, and the day after that. That's not literal, but I think to those who know the Bible know that verse. And then the constant of ever-changing, how nature, as a creation of God, is ever-changing in our eyes. But yet, I guess there are things unbound that I just spoke of that we don't understand, and not don't understand, but are just so transient that trying to define them would be pointless. Like if I tried to logically fit the concept of him being the same, but then I'd have to somehow convey that through the eyes of ours that are finite and limited, but also made in his image, which we as people are always changing, but then he is still the same and made us in his image. Therefore, would we, there are some questions there, but there are so many perspectives that are so broad and so drastic and so beyond my conceptual mind right now that I don't think I'd be able to tread it, but I'm just going to put it out there. Not for confusion, because confusion is of the enemy and of the adversary, and I do not want any of you to be confused. Remember, do not confuse yourself with trying to understand a concept. Just let it be and understand that if it is, it will happen. If it is to be known, it will be known. It will be known, and that is faith. Faith is understanding that each person will continue to define themselves, and faith is understanding that sometimes it's understanding that things maybe won't work out, but sometimes it's understanding that things will work out. I guess that's where hope and faith are beautiful elements of our life that bring not just meaning, but character, definition. But who are we to define an everlasting painting that is always being painted? Imagine there was a wall and all of humanity had to sign it once they were of age. Would it ever really end? Realistically, you could probably say, yeah, the final human sign, but it wouldn't really end. We'd continue to have a relic of humanity signing each thing. And that's one more thing before I depart and leave you off with this thought. To those who are creating works as artists and are struggling with certain things, I beg that you do not allow a project to define you. Do not allow the seed that prospered the creativity of what you are creating right now to define you. And I guess this coincides with everything, but oftentimes we get so scared to release something because we think of ourselves as being attributed to that, or being defined with it, or being associated with it immediately. But that's a very dismissive mindset, and you shouldn't allow other people's associations of yourself to trap you within a box that you didn't even put on yourself. For example, Drake, great artist, right? You can't say that he's the same man he was when he released Views or when he released Nothing Was the Same, or his first mixtape. You can't say that, because he allows his art to speak for him and where he is at the moment. It may not be the best place. It may not be a good place. It may be a great place. It may be a place of experimentation. He may go from great to good, good to bad, bad to worse, worse to even worse. I'm not saying he is, but it happens. And everything we do is a reflection of who we are at the moment. And who we are in the moment is never the same. So please do not let your identity be defined by who you are in the moment, because your moment can really change in a sudden. Moments change. Moments happen. As my coach used to say in basketball, it's a game of runs. You never know what may happen. You're down 25-7. Next thing you know, 10-0 run. You're in this game. You have 17 now. It's not that far off. So keep trekking along, keep living life, keep loving, keep being, keep breathing, keep eating, keep being blessed for the privilege to chew with all of your teeth. Because I understand that this is by no means a struggle, because there are those who have suffered worse and are suffering worse. But please, 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 please give yourself grace, as Melanie Liebert would say. And once again, I say this, it's kind of become a creed. To all those who took the time out of their day to listen to this and to understand that I am just talking, that is all that I am doing. I'm finding my voice and ultimately understanding that this may be a lane that isn't traversed by many, but I know that a voice can be found within it. Whether it's understanding that me sharing this art allows somebody else to express themselves differently, or me sharing this art allows somebody to understand themselves differently. Like listening to music and not understanding why, but just knowing that it reaches something deeply in you is what I'm talking about. That feeling, that core feeling that you know something that is unexplained, that cannot be explained, but you know it. You just don't know how you know it. You know it. And I think it's important to say that I love each and every one of you, and I thank each and every one of you. Although I don't know who this will get to, what this will be, but I know that I love each and every one of you, and I say that once again because I can't say it enough. I hope all of you have a great day. I hope all of you have beautiful, 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 beautiful days, because each one of you are incredible souls born of spirit and water, and that's a blessing. So I love you all. Hope you have a great day. And to those listening on Spotify, I hope you enjoy the song. And to those listening on YouTube, no copyright, so there will be no song. But yeah, have a beautiful day. I love you all. Until next time.